If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is a podcast all about failed movies and TV shows. We're going to talk about the films that never made it to screen, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
And my name is Daniel Kaka.
And this week, we decided to take on television instead of just talking about movies.
And we are taking on two different shows. So David did some research on one show. I did research on another. David, what show did you decide to take on?
I am going to be talking about the American version of the IT Crowd.
Oh, what a coincidence, because I'm taking on the American version of Spaced.
Wow, amazing. Almost like we planned that.
Almost.
No, this is exciting. It's the story of America recreating television shows from other countries and how many times they've tried and failed. The IT Crowd and Spaced seem especially linked in a lot of ways. They're very different styles of shows, but the audience for both has a lot of overlap. And I'm sure the stories of the American attempts are going to have some overlap as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I know of two shows that have made it from the UK and made it to the American televisions in the American
as
version.
complete American remakes.
Yes. The two that I can think of, the one that everyone probably knows best is The Office. The other one that not many people may know, but Shameless was originally a show from over the pond.
Oh, yeah. Another one that I was thinking of is House of Cards is another one that successfully made the jump.
Yes, you are right. So there have been quite a few that have successfully done it.
Well, and you can also say American Idol is another one.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if this really counts, but The Masked Singer is actually a show from South Korea.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did not know. Well, I mean, if we're opening up to other countries, there's all kinds of television shows that are based off of projects from different countries.
Yes, and then an even bigger pool to jump into is definitely American remakes of foreign films.
There should just be a podcast about American remakes of things. That sounds like an idea right there.
Yeah. That would be interesting. Doing the research of TV shows that have been remade, I guess, in the U.S., there have definitely been a lot more that have failed than have succeeded and actually made it past that threshold. And we are specifically just talking about these two, but I feel like this is going to be something that comes up more often as we go along with this.
Yeah.
One of them that I know that we are going to definitely touch on in the future, there was a TV show called Coupling that was made in the UK.
Oh, yes, I've heard about this.
It's been compared to Friends being one of my favorite TV shows, and they tried making an American version of it. Did not work, but we're going to get into that much later in our podcast.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Why don't you start us off with talking about the American version of Spaced?
Spaced is one of my favorite television shows. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I actually did a web series on my own. It was about 9 episodes long, but Spaced was definitely one of those influences and really taught me a lot about filmmaking and creating kind of an interesting web series almost out of nothing, because we were all shooting in an apartment and I had to make it interesting somehow. And Spaced really provided a lot of that inspiration for that. But we're not going to get into that. Instead, we are going to be talking about Spaced, The TV show, it was created and written by Simon Pegg and Jessica Stevenson. The show lasted for 2 series with a total of 14 episodes, with every episode directed by Edgar Wright, who, if you don't know, directed Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, The World's End, and Baby Driver.
Yes, I love Edgar Wright, and I was introduced to his movies before I found Spaced, and it was really cool. I found that around the time that, like, after Scott Pilgrim came out, and I was starting to realize, you know, who Edgar Wright was.
Yeah.
And that also is interesting. I was not expecting to know of Simon Pegg as a good writer.
Yeah.
That was something, you know, I had always seen him as an actor. I never connected that he also wrote, and his voice is such a big part of that show.
Yeah, so Simon Pegg, he was writing the whole thing with Jessica Stevenson's, but if you know any of the history behind any of the team-ups where you see Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, and Nick Frost, it's usually Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg who are sitting down and putting together the story, putting together the script. They have these really interesting special features. If you ever watch the special features for, like, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and World's End, I think The World's End has it as well, they actually saved all of their outlines for those movies, and they actually go through a breakdown of, like, how they came up with all of the bullet points in each story and really break down how the story structure is supposed to work, and it's fascinating.
Ah, there you go, look at that, Nicholas Angel. And of course, because it's Simon, I draw my traditional Pegg widow's peak. What I call the Pegg peak.
This is the character breakdown for Nicholas Angel.
Well, I guess my history was Spaced. When I discovered it, I watched Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz when I was in college. In college, that was around the time that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was coming out. One of my friends, he actually introduced me to Spaced because he knew how much I really enjoyed Edgar Wright, and he actually had the DVDs, and he's like, if you love these movies, like, you have to watch this now. And it was fascinating to see because, like, whenever we listen to early Weird Al, you get to hear, like, where all of this originates from, and you get to see it fully fleshed out in the movie. But seeing this as a TV show, you get to see where Edgar Wright is really experimenting with his style.
Yeah.
And really perfecting it there.
Yeah, and discovering, like, that style of editing that he is so well known for now. You know, if I'm not mistaken, Dan, I think one of the first conversations that we ever had, just me and you casually talking, was about how great it would have been if Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was directed by Edgar Wright.
True, yes.
I feel like that's a thing that happened.
Yes, we talked about, it would be great to see him do that. Also, I think that was around the time that we had learned that Edgar Wright was supposed to direct the very first Ant-Man movie as well.
Yes, oh, yes.
Yeah, and I was just gunning for an Edgar Wright, just Marvel movie, just an Edgar Wright Marvel movie. Yeah. And that disappointment that he was let go from the project, I was like, just so many missed opportunities.
While I, love Edgar and certainly hope to work with him, I am excited about this new direction, and hopefully it'll turn out okay.
I guess that's something we got to live with from now on. Maybe we'll talk about that later on, but we'll see. All right, Spaced. The show was produced by Big Talk, the production company behind everything that Edgar Wright has ever made. It was also made by the LWTV, or the London Weekend Television, and Paramount Comedy Channel. And the show premiered on Channel 4 in the UK. It was on the air from September 24th, 1999 to April 13th, 2001. The show starred Simon Pegg as Tim Beasley, Jessica Stevenson as Daisy Steiner, Nick Frost as Mike Watt, Katie Carmichael as Twist Morgan, Mark Heap as Brian Topp, and Julia Deacon as Marcia Clean. Going back to when this all started, Simon Pegg, Jessica Stevenson, and Katie Carmichael met on a short-lived 3-episode total sketch show called 6 Pairs of Pants.
I am a boffin. I too am a boffin.
Wait a minute. Are you a boffin?
Yes.
Are you a woman?
Yes.
Aha.
Well, you can be a boffin and a woman.
Oh, Lord. You mean a boffinette?
Yes.
Or a boffin with an E? A boffooz. Ah, a boffess.
Yes.
How do we know that you are a boffess?
She said so.
How do we know that you're a boffess?
She said so.
How do we know that you're a boffess?
How do we know you're a boffin?
Edgar Wright had met Simon and Jessica at a stand-up comedy night which featured Matt Lucas and David Williams. Edgar worked with Matt and David on their show Mash and Peas as a director. Jessica Stevenson's also makes an appearance in a few of those episodes, so that's where those two first worked with each other. After that, Edgar Wright directed the entire series of Asylum, which featured both Simon and Jessica in the cast.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a toy phone.
Sorry, you've caught me out.
This was the first time that Edgar had ever worked with Simon Pegg, was on that show. So the idea of Spaced came from Simon and Jessica talking about creating a sitcom and how they were fed up with sitcoms about 20-somethings where all they were interested in doing was just shagging each other. They wanted to break away from that norm. They wanted to explore the differences between men and women in a completely platonic situation.
In fact, the whole conflict is to try not to be shagging each other.
Yes.
Could probably cut down on the fake sex noises.
Shame.
On top of that, they wanted to shoot it as a single camera show with no audience, because all sitcoms at that time was always live audience, multi-camera, having that canned laughter, but they did not want that at all. Basically, they were just going against the grain for every trope of a sitcom. Even without a pilot episode written, they were actually approved for 7 episodes already. So Simon, Jessica, and Edgar Wright all started working on the show right away. Usually with TV shows, the director is brought in at the last minute and is in charge of just filming the material that's handed to them. But bringing Edgar on so early in the process, they were able to incorporate a lot of his unique style and camera usage and editing, and his endless references to iconic movies and adapting their styles. And they actually started making that part of the story. They started scripting that into the story, and I thought that was fascinating.
In movies, we definitely see the directors as like the creative drive, but in television shows, it's the writer and the directors are usually like there for hire. But I think it's more common than not in British television shows where the director is there for every episode. I'm not sure how true that is, but I do think it is more of an American thing to not have the director be as much of a voice in there. But you can absolutely say that even if other British television shows have the same director for every episode, none have a director as responsible for the style as Edgar Wright.
Yeah, and I've noticed, like, even with sitcom shows, I can't tell the difference between when a show is directed by one person or another. Like, even actors will step in and just kind of be the director for an episode or a few. So, like, even in The Good Place, Kristen Bell stepped up, and she was a director for a few episodes. In Friends, David Schwimmer stepped up to be an episode as well. In Boy Meets World, William Russ did the same thing as well. He's the actor who played the dad in that film. He was the director of a few of those episodes, too. So, but, I mean, even when they step in as being a director, you don't really see much of a difference in style. They're really the ones who are just in charge of that situation. But yes, you are right that when it comes to these shows, it's really the writer who is the one that makes the show and kind of creates the style and how it looks. So, we're going back to Space. If you had never seen the show at all, this is a summary of what's happening in the show. So Daisy Steiner and Tim Beasley are two London-based 20-somethings who met by chance in a cafe while both are looking for apartments, or in that case, they're looking for a flat. Despite barely knowing each other, they conspire to pose as a young professional couple in order to meet the requisites of an advertisement for a relatively cheap apartment in a distinctive building at 23 Meteor Street, Tufnell Park, which is owned by and also houses the landlady, who's Marcia.
I like to think I'm an approachable landlady.
In the beginning of the series, both of them have these big major breakups, and right away they have the best redirect where it looks like Daisy and Tim are actually in a relationship with each other and are breaking up.
You know, is there someone else?
Sort of.
Don't... What?
My boyfriend.
That bastard! I bloody knew it!
I'm sorry. You know, I really am. It was just a bit of fun, you know? Just doesn't feel right. Okay?
Fine.
All right?
Fine.
Look, there's a bit of change.
Sarah, please don't do this.
You can leave your stuff here until you find somewhere else.
I love you.
Having that misdirect is so masterfully done. Definitely, even just like the first 10 seconds, just watch that and you'll get hooked onto the show. Also in the building, they have Brian Topp, an eccentric conceptual artist who lives and works on his various pieces in the apartment just below them.
What do you do, Brian?
An artist.
I'm an artist.
Oh, what kind of thing do you do?
Anger. Pain. Fear. Aggression.
Watercolours or...
It's a little bit more complex than that.
Other frequent visitors of the show, we have Daisy's best friend, Twist, and we have Tim's best friend, Mike Watt, who is played by Nick Frost, who is an over-the-top military enthusiast.
Hello, Mike. Hello, I'm Daisy. Nice to meet you.
How you doing? Sergeant Mike Watts, TA. It's the longest way up, shortest way down.
One of the things I love about this show is the characters and how, vibrant and interesting they are, and how they are more than just like a caricature. Like, it's very easy for Nick Frost's character to be a caricature of some military enthusiast, but they managed to do more to flesh out each one of these characters where they all feel real.
Yeah, even Brian as well. Like, Brian feels like he's just this over-the-top artist, very much in his head, and then they start exploring. Like, there's a episode where he goes to an art gallery, and you realize that the art gallery that he's going to was a former partner of his, and you can see the jealousy in him, and it's like that character growth that he has in just that one episode is so great. Okay, enough about the original Space. Let's go on to when it was going to be made into an American version. So, Fox announced on October 27th of 2007 that they would be producing an American version of Space that would premiere on May of 2008. At first, Edgar Wright was approached to direct the show, but declined because he felt the American remake was impossible to do and would lose its fundamental theme. And he actually had this to say about it: the same reason it couldn't be a film. Part of the charm of Space is its people in North London acting out stuff from American films. You know, Hollywood in kind of suburbia. American TV is much more glamorous. It doesn't make sense. I remember that the producer at the time said, yeah, we'd have to change a few things. We'd have to take out the drugs and the swearing, and obviously Mike can't have guns. That's a major part of the show.
Absolutely.
The director that they convinced to remake the series was Mac G.
Oh,
yes.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was going to direct the whole thing.
I thought you were going to say Peyton Reed.
Oh, I wish. But no, he was convinced to do the Weird Al show. Yeah, Mac G, the man behind Charlie's Angels and other things that don't amount to Charlie's Angels, except maybe the music video for Smash Mouth's All-Star.
Somebody!
When they made that announcement, Edgar Wright made fun of this, and he started calling this show Mech-Spaced. This was not going well from the beginning. Edgar Wright, Simon Pegg, Jessica Stevenson's, they were all pissed about this remake. After they all disapproved, Fox still went on with the production, and their names would still be attached to the show. Like, much like Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant on The Office, like, they're still up there as executive producers. For them, it was just a lack of respect that their names were going to be part of it, and yet they didn't want anything to do with it. And Edgar Wright was angry about this, especially with the press, because the way that they were selling the show was that they were saying, these are from the guys who made Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz. Check out this new TV show. And by stating that, you completely leave out Jessica Stevenson being one of the initial creators of this show. It was Simon Pegg and Jessica Stevenson.
She's such a massive part of like the feel of that show.
Yeah.
And it is disappointing that I don't know if I've seen her in much after Spaced.
No, she does a lot of small roles. They wanted to give her a bigger role. I forget the story behind this. I should look this up. But they wanted to give her a bigger role in Shaun of the Dead, but she ended up making those few appearances in there.
I think the way the cameo works, where she's in there for a small amount, but is like the mirror image of Simon Pegg's crew, I think even kind of makes it funnier that she's not in it a whole ton.
Yeah. But I feel like Fox was undercutting her just by trying to sell it this way.
Absolutely.
And it was just, it was not cool. Not good. In the American version, only the pilot was filmed.
So, Christian, what do you do out in the big wide world of sports?
Artist.
Really? Ben's an artist.
Yeah.
My husband, Ben. What kind of things do you paint?
The usual. Anger. Cos'è bastardo? Fear. Aggression. Pain.
Watercolors?
No. It's a bit more complex than that.
The main characters, their names were changed to Ben and April. They were played by Josh Lawson, who recently played James Murdoch in Bombshell, and Terry Phillips in The 11 O'Clock. And then April was played by Sarah Rue from the show Popular, and she was the girl in Can't Hardly Wait who was cutting up all of those soda can rings.
Why would Amanda Beckett pay any attention to a unique spirit like Preston, or even a unique spirit like me, for instance? Maybe it's because she's just a little too busy ordering around her little conformist flock of sheep. Shame!
Nick Frost's character was going to be played by Will Sasso. Do you remember him from Mad TV?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. He would have been Nick Frost's character. His name would have been Bill. And then the eccentric artist would have been played by Federico Dorde. And I tried looking into what he's most known for, but it looks like he mostly does a lot of small roles. And had the show actually taken off, this probably would have been his biggest role that he had.
I have to say, I did watch a couple of clips of the American Space before we started recording today, and he is by far my favorite part of that.
The art world, it's a cesspool of money and mini crab cakes.
Like, he is very different from Brian, but I think he's different in a very good way, where he brings a new energy to it that's, like, doing a similar thing as the original characters doing it, but doing it in a very different way. And that is something that is, like, an American translation that I think works of this show.
Okay.
That's just me personally.
Yeah. But as far as, like, Ben and April go, it seems like they were just trying to emulate both Simon and Jessica.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work. It felt like with the camera movements and the edits, it looks like they were just trying to do everything shot for shot.
You know, it's funny that the actor Josh Lawson, like, I saw his face and I was like, I've definitely seen him in things before. Looking at his IMDb right now, I've seen him in Superstore. I know that, but I don't remember what his character is like in that. He's one of those faces I've definitely seen a bunch.
Overall, I think Fox was trying to capitalize on the success that we saw with The Office, but Space had just such a unique tone and a unique story for those who were involved. And trying to recreate that setting, especially in America, was just so difficult. It just didn't translate well, and I feel like the executives over at Fox just truly didn't understand that.
Yeah.
And that is The American Space, the TV show that never was.
Well, I have quite a bit to say about the American version of the IT Crowd. There is a lot going on in this story that I find super duper interesting. First of all, what is your familiarity with the IT Crowd?
So I didn't get into the IT Crowd until maybe two or 3 years ago. I've heard of it a while back. Like I heard about it way back in college. I just never really got into it. And then once it was on Netflix, like I couldn't stop watching it. I put on an episode and I just kept going and eventually it all finished up. I didn't realize how few episodes there were either. Because I binged it all and it was like less than a week. And I was like, was that it? Is this over? That was all?
Yeah.
But yeah, I loved it.
This was a show for me. I discovered this show in high school, and that was when Netflix streaming first launched, and this was one of the first shows that Netflix had on their streaming platform. And then it was taken off and then was put back on recently. For me, this was like the TV show about geeks and geek culture. Pretty soon after Big Bang Theory came out, which was supposedly about geeks and geek culture, but we all know that show does a terrible job at reflecting that world.
I've heard the best description for The Big Bang Theory is that it's nerd blackface.
Yes, absolutely. It is about nerds, but written by people who have never been nerds and know nothing about what it means to be a geek. Like, it's absolutely, that's exactly the way to say it.
Yes.
So, the IT Crowd. In 2006, Graham Linehan created The IT Crowd, the popular British sitcom about the IT department of a major corporation. He wrote and directed every single episode. Before making The IT Crowd, he had success creating other British sitcoms, including Black Books and Father Ted. Have you ever seen Father Ted?
No, I haven't seen Father Ted. I've seen Black Books, though.
Oh, I've never seen Black Books, but I love Father Ted. Father Ted is ridiculous.
Black Books. Oh.
I have a friend who grew up in Ireland where Father Ted takes place, and she introduced me to that show. Great show. Father Ted especially has got a lot of subversive comedy in it, especially for its days.
Yeah.
Now, sort of opposite to Spaced, in creating the IT Crowd, Linehan took a big risk in returning to a 3-wall set filmed in front of a live studio audience. You know, in 2006, The Office had come out and really changed the game as far as TV comedies go. Again, shows like Spaced were doing the single camera thing first, but Ricky Gervais's Office really was kind of like the nail in the coffin for sitcoms filmed in front of a live studio audience, especially in the UK.
Yeah.
And so Linehan, was taking a really big risk in deciding, no, I think that what's best for this show is something with a laugh track. He said, quote, "I trust my instincts, so I'm going to do it my way and hope people come to me." I don't know how you feel about shows with a laugh track, and this wasn't canned laughter. This was actual live studio audience. It's generally a format that I don't really like, but I do think it works for this show for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't mind the laugh track. I don't feel like it cheapens anything because I feel like with comedy, like if it's funny, it's going to be funny. And I feel like there are some shows that even if you take out the laugh track, it's still going to be funny too. So I feel like even with Friends, if you took out the laugh track, I would still enjoy it. How I Met Your Mother, if you took out the laugh track with that, I still think it would be funny. And I think that with these shows, if they choose to use the live audience, they choose to use that laugh track, that's really up to them, and they might just be kind of referring back to the way that shows used to be, feeling as if you are part of something bigger. You are actually part of an audience. You're not just sitting alone with these characters. You're actually part of the crowd watching this. So I really don't mind it.
It allows you to make bigger characters and broader jokes that wouldn't feel as accepted in a single camera style show.
Who's the Honeymooners? I'm trying to remember the actor's name. Jackie Gleason. So with Jackie Gleason, a lot of the times he wouldn't really memorize his lines that very often. He really should have, but he relied a lot on the audience, and he knew he was performing well if the audience was responding to him while they were filming. Even though a lot of the cast members were very frustrated with him, he really made that show. It depends on how the show is using it. With How I Met Your Mother, that's one of the few sitcoms that actually never had a live studio audience at all.
Yeah. I'm really curious the decision behind that for How I Met Your Mother, because I think it works for that show.
Well, if you look at their style on how everything works, a lot of it is like cutting back and forth between set pieces. And that's the big difference, is they're able to really expand on how they create their story by going from set to set to set. So like even like having characters talk on the phone. I remember there's one specific scene which I absolutely love, which would never work in a live studio audience situation. It's where Marshall is calling up Ted. Marshall he's like in a stairway somewhere. He's like at work. Ted is like going into the subway somewhere.
Oh wait, Ted, one more thing. How about the cookies? Are they delicious?
And it cuts to Robin. She has a fire extinguisher just like spraying the oven. She's going, "Ah, Mother of God!" If you took that and broke that down and you thought about it, like with a live studio audience, you have to send them to that part of the set and then move them to another part of the set and then move them to another part of the set, and you wouldn't get that laughter.
Mm-hmm.
When they tried making their first episode, their pilot episode, it took them nearly 9 hours to shoot, and they actually did try to do it in front of a live studio audience, and they realized because they were doing so many set changes, they were treating a live audience show like a single camera comedy, and they realized, okay, we want the format, we want to keep this format, but there's no way that we can have a live studio audience. So they cut that out. So every laughter after the pilot episode is canned laughter. It is not a live studio audience.
Going back to the IT crowd,
Yes.
so the show starred Chris O'Dowd and Richard Ayoade as two IT department workers working in a major corporation. A lot of the situational comedy aspect, the story of the show, revolves around Catherine Parkinson as Jen, who is a normal person who gets transferred to their department despite knowing absolutely nothing about computers.
There will be some piece of evidence that will prove without any shadow of a doubt that you don't know anything about computers. What are you doing? Plugging in your computer?
And a large part of the show revolves around her trying to get them acclimated into normal, likable people world, while also they are ridiculing the fact that she doesn't know what an internet is. One of the big things that is well known in the show that I found kind of interesting is the title sequence. It was done by a group called Shinola, who has done music videos for bands like Radiohead, and the title sequences for Glow, and, to bring it back to Spaced, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
What? That's awesome.
And they also animated the guide sequences in the movie Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
So I just thought it was interesting how that group is connected to the narrative, especially tying back to Spaced. The show did turn out to be a success, but not at first. It didn't quite catch on with audiences with the first season, but it started to get more attention after being nominated for a BAFTA for Best Situation Comedy. It ran for a total of 4 series, which is a lot by British standards, and concluded in 2013 with a special.
Yeah, I'm looking at the breakup of when the series happened. So it started in 2006. They had another series in 2007, 2008, and then there was a jump from 2008 to 2010, and then another jump from 2010 to 2013. Do you have an explanation as to what happened there?
You know what? I didn't research into an explanation on that, and I'm sure if I was looking that up right now, I could find it. But I would bet that a large part of that goes into what I was going to talk about next, is that how it really spread as a cult series in America as well. A large part of the reason that they came back and kept making it was because it started to get so much of a cult following. You know, for me, and I think for a lot of people who experienced the show in America, this was something that was discovered on Netflix when they first launched the streaming service in 2007. IT Crowd was one of the first shows that they had the entire run of. And at the time, and even now, there was not a lot of entertainment about being a nerd in the tech era that was made as well as the IT crowd. I think the slow spread of its cult following helps to play into why they came back years later to make another series and the special finale. Phrases like turning it off and on again have become staples of geek culture.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
And the original show launched the careers of Chris O'Dowd and Richard Ayoade and introduced a lot of Americans like myself to British comedy legends like Matt Berry and Noel Fielding. Matt Berry, who plays Dennis Reinhold in the son in IT crowd, who's also shown up in all sorts of things. My first introduction to Matt Berry was through the IT crowd. Now he's become one of my favorite comedy people, especially in Garth Marenghi's Darkplace.
This is a show about great original writing.
Where the hell's Douglas? He should be back by now.
We have to help him.
No, Dice Liz would never make it. The batteries in these fans are spent. I think they were warped.
That's what you get when you buy cheap batteries.
Well, tell me about it. You try and make a saving, yet economically it's more sensible to buy from a reputable high street retailer.
And not from some street corner fly-by-night with a suitcase.
Exactly. Who knows? They may even be stolen.
But the initial price of a name battery is so much higher.
I'm afraid they'll always be dear, Liz, but you're paying for reliability. I personally use rechargeable batteries. Couldn't use my charger last night, though, because I was up playing the keyboard till 2.
Well, we probably ought to check in with Reed. Maybe he has a supply of name batteries like Duracell or Everready.
Well, you'd hope so.
Which you introduced me to a while back, and I've watched through it, and I enjoy a lot of it. Now,
it's so good.
Love a lot of what he's doing. Like, I got into Toast of London, which also is on Netflix right now. Check that out if you really enjoy Matt Berry. A lot of his sense of humor is infused into that show. And then nowadays we have What We Do in the Shadows, the TV series.
Yeah.
Which is, he's so great in it. He's such a great actor.
One other funny side note about the casting in the IT crowd that I found in my research today was Richard Ayoade talking about how he got the part. Graham Linehan wrote it for Richard Ayoade. And of course he was like, so, should I try out a different voice or something? No, just do your voice. Just be you, and you will be perfect for this part.
I told you before, I don't do that kind of thing.
And he absolutely is. He's phenomenal. Now, nothing can have any amount of popularity without American producers trying to figure out how to copy it. In 2005, NBC purchased the rights to the wildly popular British show The Office, partnering with producer Ben Silverman. Ben Silverman is one of those producer types whose name you've never heard, but he's responsible for a ton of decisions in media production. He is the founder of the company Reveal? I'm not sure. I think it's called Reveal, which not only produced The Office, but also Ugly Betty, which is a remake of the Colombian show Yo Soy Betty LaFay, and Jane the Virgin, which is a remake of the Venezuelan show Buena de Virgin. Are you noticing a trend here with the types of shows that he produces?
Yeah, it seems like he's watching British television and says, hey, how can we make this?
Yeah. Honestly, his whole career in entertainment seems to be built around taking shows from other countries and adapting them for American audiences. Not all of the shows he's produced. He's also responsible for The Biggest Loser, which is an extremely popular reality show. So I guess the one thing that they have original is reality. But they've even are responsible for a show called Nashville Star, which is a remake of American Idol, but specifically for country music. Meaning that not only did he do American remakes of British shows or Venezuelan shows or Guatemalan shows, he also did an American remake of an American show.
Okay.
I apologize if I'm being a little glib. This is the type of person that I think it's insane that he seems like somebody who is in it for the money more than in it for the creativity. He seems like the type of person who you get caricatures of on Entourage, which he actually made a cameo in Entourage as himself. So now, NBC's version of The Office turned out to be an incredible success, though. As we all know, it's possibly the most popular sitcom of the decade. And in 2007, NBC had a big shakeup in their leadership, and Ben Silverman was named one of the co-chairs of NBC Entertainment. His
Okay.
success had landed him as one of the top decision makers of the network. He was responsible for their #1 comedy, and that's really what NBC was mostly known for, and probably still is mostly known for, is their comedies. Now, the May of 2007, the network made a bold announcement. This would be the first year in 30 years that NBC would not have a new original comedy series in the fall.
Oh.
They had always been known for their comedy shows, but this year they were trying to cut costs, they were trying to refigure out some things, and they said, no more new comedies.
Okay.
Except they did make one announcement. They were going to have one mid-season series that was an adaptation of a British sitcom, The IT Crowd.
Okay. So wait, did this actually made it to air?
No.
Okay.
But it was filmed.
Okay.
Now, when they announced The IT Crowd, while most television shows have 1, maybe 2 series creators, they announced 4 writers that were doing this adaptation. David Guarascio, Joe Port, Moses Port, and Joe Wiseman. I did not find a lot of information about them. I'm not sure if they always work together and are a collaborative writing team, or if this was just a studio hiring so many people that we have to give them all credits.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with stories of why movies turn out bad with studio interference, there's so much going on in this project being put together that has all of those warning signs for something terrible. By the way, did you try to watch any of the pilot?
I watched a scene with Joel McHale.
The show was to star Joel McHale as Chris O'Dowd's role of Roy.
I mean, they have no respect for us up there. No respect whatsoever.
At the time, he was best known as being the host of The Soup or being a sleazy banker in Spider-Man 2. Joel McHale is now probably best known as Jeff Winger in Community, and so it's interesting that he did get his leading role in an NBC sitcom. Also, looking into his IMDb, his second credit on IMDb as in an episode of Bill Nye the Science Guy in 1998.
He drank my fluid.
Your Honor, I've tried to explain this a million times. Warm fluids rise. If this is true, Your Honor, then it can be deduced that the fluid rose out of the glass by itself.
Which I thought was interesting. The role of Jen was played by up-and-coming comedy actor Jessica St. Clair. Do you recognize that name, Jessica St. Clair?
I remember Jessica St. Clair, yeah.
Yeah, she is best known now for being in Bridesmaids or the series Playing House, but she's also shown up on basically every podcast and sketch show around.
Yep, she recently did an episode of How Did This Get Made?
And if you look through her credits, she's been on all sorts of things. A regular on things like Comedy Bang Bang, all over the place. For the boss, Denham, they had mostly TV drama character actor Rocky Carroll. He had a significant role in the movie Crimson Tide and was also in one of the NCIS runs like a couple years ago. And finally, we have Richard Ayoade reprising his role as Moss. Which has got to be the most bizarre decision in this whole series of bizarre decisions.
It's kind of like in the movie Death at a Funeral was originally a British movie, and then it was remade into an American version, but both of those movies had Peter Dinklage in each one of them, and he played the same role.
Oh, interesting.
In each one of them.
Interesting. That's so bizarre when that happens.
Yeah. Still British, too.
Yeah. So the pilot is very strange. Like The Office, it's almost a line-by-line recreation of the British pilot. You can't find the pilot online anymore, unfortunately, but you can find a lot of people have done comparison videos of like playing scenes from both pilots at the same time to see how they sync up.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Okay, well, the button on the side, is it glowing?
Which is very, very bizarre. Richard Ayoade described the experience as, quote, a bit like a play where everyone else had left. It was very odd. He also said that out of the original cast, he was the only one, quote, dumb enough to do it. one of the crazy things that sticks out to me, I am a massive fan of Community. I know you're a big fan of Community, too.
am.
Joel McHale playing a schlubby loser does not work at all. Part of the whole point of the character of Roy is that no one likes Roy. He is so unlikable, and he's very, very bad at like being likable. And he has this thing where he wants people to like him, but also doesn't want to give an effort.
Yeah.
Joel McHale is not that person. He's far too charismatic.
Yeah.
He's far too much of the cool guy. Maybe it would be different if I hadn't seen him as Jeff Winger first, but I doubt it. Like, especially with his role on The Soup, he's being the cooler-than-you sarcastic guy.
Yeah. If you made this into, or if you were to cast this with an American cast, like, who would you actually look into, and who could fill these roles best? Like, Danny Pudi as Richard Ayoade's character, as Moss.
That's very good.
I think he could do really well with that.
That could absolutely work.
Tyler Levine. I think
Tyler Levine. I am not familiar with this person.
Labine. Tyler Levine. You've definitely seen him before. Look him up. I think he would be a great Roy.
I could see that.
Because he has one of those personalities where he seems like he is a deadbeat. He seems like he just can't catch a break, but he has that charisma about him where you want to like him, but everyone seems to hate him.
I can totally see that. Yeah, looking at it right now, I don't know if I've seen much that he's been in, but I could definitely see him as that kind of role. Joel McHale, in a later interview, had some interesting things to say about the experience. He said, "Boy, do I still take shit from British viewers. Like, Joel, how dare you? What the fuck were you thinking?" I was like, I wanted a job, all right? And really, I don't blame you, Joel McHale.
Yeah.
Like, you were trying to get into the comedy TV game. This could have been really great for your career. I don't blame you at all. I still don't think you were right for the part, but that's not your fault, Joel McHale.
Yeah, like I start to take sympathy towards actors who are in bad movies, bad TV shows, because honestly, they're looking for a job, and we've all had bad jobs in our past. The problem that they have is that job is very public. And
Yes, absolutely.
And they're the face of it. That's the problem, is that the people making the bad decisions can hide away, and no one knows it's their fault.
Yeah. He also said, quote, "I could never follow someone like Chris O'Dowd, who is insanely talented and a very nice guy, I hear. But Richard Ayoade was going to be in it, one of the smartest and funniest people on the planet. I count myself very lucky just to work with him for the few weeks that I did, and thank God we're still friends. He's directed an episode of Community, and I'm genuinely fond of him in a grand way." Did you know that Richard Ayoade directed an episode of Community?
No. Do you know which episode?
He actually directed my favorite episode of that show, Critical Film Studies, which is the My Dinner with Andre episode.
Yes.
That was
great.
So good. There's going to be a lot of community connections throughout this whole story. One more quote from him that I found from this interview that he did, which I did not write down where this interview was, but he was also asked if it did make it to series, if it would have found its own groove and established an audience in the same way The American Office did, because that was a show that at first was a weird recreation, but then pretty soon found its own tone and, made its own thing. In response to this question, Joel McHale said, "There is no way to predict that. I could say it probably would have gone on to be the most successful show in the history of television and the world, possibly. And I think we would have discovered a new life form, perhaps on Mars or Saturn, who would have picked up the show, and it would have become an intergalactic hit, bringing people and aliens together for the first time." I love that dream for the American IT crowd. Clearly, Joel McHale is somebody who is very aware of how silly the whole story and the whole situation is, and can have fun with himself.
Oh yeah, watching his personality on Talk Soup, you can tell like he messes around a lot, and he's one that is not afraid to make fun of himself.
Yes, absolutely. Now, After filming the pilot and writing multiple episodes, they did have multiple episodes written, the series was canceled before it made it to air, after it didn't quite land for Silverman and the network canceled production. Now, NBC was faced with having no comedy series, not even one based off of a British television show, so they quickly pivoted and rushed into production a new project to their slate, a television show called Kath and Kim, which is a sitcom based off of the Australian sitcom of the same name.
Awesome.
Silverman left NBC in 2009 after only 2 years with the network to form a new company, Electus. In the year 2008, there was also a German version created whose title translates to The I-Team - The Boys at the Mouse. Terrible title. Yeah. It had an extremely negative reaction and was canceled after 2 episodes had aired.
Oh, wow.
So creating a rendition of the IT Crowd for a different country has not seen a lot of success. Yeah. The story does not end there, though. In 2012, after the British IT Crowd hadn't made its comeback, but before it had done its series finale, in 2012, the American pilot for the IT Crowd was leaked online and quickly became the buzz of the internet. Unfortunately, though, it seems like all copies of this unaired pilot have disappeared. I feel very lucky that I saw it when I saw it and can still remember watching that very, very strange thing. You can still find comparison videos on YouTube, though, with clips of the original lined up with the American version. Then, after the British version had finished, in 2014, it was reported that NBC was taking another crack at adapting the series.
Jesus,
this time, nope. This time produced by Bill Lawrence, who was the creator of Scrubs.
Yeah. Bill Lawrence and Clone High.
Yeah, Clone High. A couple of other projects as well.
Cougar Town.
Yes. And the pilot would be written by and produced by the writing team Neil Goldman and Garrett Donovan, who had previously worked on Family Guy. They were 2 of the main writers on Scrubs, and coincidentally, also worked on Community.
Oh.
The characters Garrett and Fat Neil are reportedly named after them. Entertainment journalism at the time was not happy about this idea. When I was doing some research, I found headlines from this year like, quote, NBC orders pilot of American IT Crowd remake because that worked so well the first time. Now, I couldn't find a lot of information about this pilot. Most of the news reports I found were written when it was just announced, and there wasn't really much after that. It seems to indicate that it might have been filmed, but I couldn't find any information of the cast or anything like that. One notable thing I did find, though, is that this version at least had the thumbs up from original British creator Graham Linehan, who reportedly worked closely, quote unquote, with the producers. In what capacity work closely means, I am not sure. But I found a tweet from him that said, actually, tempting disaster to say we're going to get it right this time. Should really say we have a better chance of getting it right.
Jesus.
Still must not have been a good enough chance, though. Then, in December 2017, 3 years later, Variety reported that they had exclusive knowledge that NBC was again attempting to create an American pilot.
Who are these people?
I know! They never learn! This time, though, the pilot would be written by Graham Linehan. So the original British creator was coming back to write the American version as well. This would have been produced, supposedly, in the year 2018 to air during the 2018-19 season, but obviously that never happened either. And again, I couldn't find any information if there was a planned cast or if any filming happened. I just saw the announcements for it and then nothing about that again.
Jeez.
As far as we know, that is the end of the story of the American remake of the IT Crowd, but I'm sure this is something we're going to be hearing about every 4 years for the rest of our lives.
It's the Halley's Comet of TV shows.
Yes, it totally is. It's just, the project will never die. Here's the thing with doing a remake of a show like IT Crowd, and I think it applies the same for a show like Spaced. Mm-hmm. Your core audience are nerds who know how to watch the original version. Yes. Like, you're not fooling anybody with this. Mm-hmm. There's no need for it.
Talking about all this reminds me of the TV show Episodes. Have you ever heard of Episodes?
Yes, that's the oh no, I'm thinking of Extras.
No.
Which one's Episodes?
So Episodes has Matt LeBlanc, who is playing the character Matt LeBlanc. No, wait, sorry, Matt LeBlanc. I should know that. Anyway, it stars Matt LeBlanc playing the character Matt LeBlanc. But it is about a TV show that was popular in the UK, and the show starts off with the two writers being invited to LA to make an American version of their TV show that was so successful and just wrapped up in the UK, and all of the problems that run into it.
Let's talk about casting.
Yes, well, we've already got Julian committed to recreate the role of Lyman, so that's half the battle right there.
Merc loves the show. Julian is the show. Yeah, Merc may not have actually seen your show. Has he seen it? No.
And how producers get in the way, about how trying to translate UK culture into an American culture and realizing that that doesn't line up very well. And it just shows you like how something that was made so successful and how it can so easily fall apart. It's definitely a dramatic representation of how this can go wrong, but it is an excellent, at least if you're not familiar with the industry, like it is an excellent look into like why something like this can go wrong so badly in so many ways.
Absolutely. Maybe I'm throwing too much shade at Ben Silverman, which is a name that I didn't know until I started researching this story. But it seems like he fits so perfectly that archetype of the producer that doesn't get story and creativity and is not going to be able to make a thing like be creatively successful. They're just keen on making it financially successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's funny because like down the road of this, like there are like interesting people involved, like having the Bill Lawrence version. Like he is somebody who is a legitimate creator, Neil Goldman and Garrett Donovan. That could have been something, or even the 2018 Graham Linehan version could have been something as well. But alas, there does come a point where you just got to let the thing die. It's interesting when you compare this to Edgar Wright and Jessica Stevenson and Simon Pegg, in them really hating the idea of an American version of Spaced being created, whereas Graham Linehan was like, hey, you know, whatever, this could be a thing. And even Richard Ayoade was in the thing. Like
with Spaced, the story works so well because you had two people who were in a unique situation where they were just trying to throw themselves out there as much as possible to get that recognition and to create a story that for them is authentic. And I think that's what we are experiencing, is that with the IT Crowd, with Spaced, both of those shows feel authentic. And when you try to translate that over to an American version, you lose that. You lose that tone. You lose that natural sense of, I guess, storytelling. Like you don't have that tone anymore. And when you lose that tone, you don't get an authentic feeling from the audience. And I think that's what makes these shows fail. It feels like you just took a copy of something, but like the yellow ink in your printer is out. And you think to yourself, like, what picture possibly has yellow ink that's going to destroy this? And then you realize, oh, yellow's in almost every color. And this ruined the picture. So, yeah, I think it's a lot of producers who think if this was successful there, we can do that here. No problem. They see the numbers, they see the success, but they don't realize what made it authentic in the first place.
Absolutely. And the thing that it always comes down to is having an original, unique take is the thing that's going to make it successful. Mm-hmm. The reason that Spaced was successful, not because of it was this plot, but it was because of the energy that people brought into it, the unique tone, the unique takes, and even like the successful remakes, like some of the other shows that Ben Silverman produced, The Office, Ugly Betty, Jane the Virgin, I think are all, I've only seen 2 out of the 3 of those, but are all successful and, even creatively successful in their own way. But the thing that makes them successful is when they start to figure out how to differentiate themselves from the original source material.
Yeah, it's like when The Office started getting great, like the reason why it took off was, 40-year-old version definitely helped that along. But after you exit the first season, like the first season is one of its weakest seasons. And once they found their footing, once they realized where the show was going and really knew how to utilize those characters and make it their own, that's when the show became great. That's why people are gravitating to it. And that's why it's one of the most popular TV shows on Netflix still to this day.
Like, I think probably the big difference between the Ricky Gervais version and the Steve Carell version is that Ricky Gervais is an irredeemable asshole and is just terrible all the time. And I think the American Office started to get more successful because they made Michael Scott a more sympathetic character, and they made Dwight a more sympathetic character. And I think it's something that is a big difference between like American and British television, especially comedies, is for whatever reason, British shows can have irredeemable assholes, but the American comedies, like, they need to have some form of sympathy to those characters.
Yes.
One final thing that I thought interesting that is a little bit of a tangent. Graham Linehan, the latest thing that I found that he has been working on is returning back to Father Ted, which was one of his first television shows, which is about a priest who's terrible at being a priest.
Yes.
He is now working on a stage show called Pope Ted, the Father Ted musical.
Oh my God. That sounds great.
He had been wanting to do some going back to Father Ted but just couldn't find the right story, and then said, quote, "I didn't want to do anything like this until the right idea came along. And when Trump won and Corbyn won, I kind of thought maybe Ted has a chance."
Yes.
So Father Ted becoming Pope is what he's working on now.
Wow. That's an interesting reflection on like current political situations. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so there you go.
Wow.
I always like to think about what if these projects did get made. Do you think if the American Spaced made it to television, do you think it would have had any success?
I don't think so. I don't think it would have made it anywhere. Just because it feels like they're trying to copy the style of Edgar Wright, and yet it doesn't feel like Edgar Wright. Because, part of the reason why Edgar Wright's style is so amazing is because he has this infinite knowledge of cinema. And he just loves cinema. He loves movies. And that shows in his work. And it doesn't translate well if someone is trying to replicate Edgar Wright's style, because they're not working from the fact that they may love movies, they may love Edgar Wright, but if you're trying to copy Edgar Wright, it doesn't feel like you're in love with cinema. The show that does it best, and to bring it back to, is Community. Community is one of those shows that takes on different types of styles from movies and TV shows, and shows an appreciation of those shows and movies by integrating it into the storylines and into the show itself.
I could absolutely see Edgar Wright directing an episode of Community, and that would have been incredible.
Yes. Yeah, and it would fit. It would have fit perfectly.
Absolutely, it would fit.
Yeah.
As Community ties so much into the IT crowd as well. Like, Community, I think, is the show that the American IT crowd and American Spaced wanted to be. In the same way that it reflects on like movies and movie fandom, there's a lot of ways that it reflects on maybe not geek culture, but like kind of loser culture in Community, and celebrates that level of fandom that people have. And I think it really is the show that managed to get the audience that probably both of these American remakes wanted.
Yeah. With the IT crowd, then, what do you think would make this successful? And is there a TV show out there that's similar to it that's actually doing well?
I have no idea what would have made this successful. I think part of the appeal of the IT crowd is that it is losers who are kind of pushed off and forgotten by society. And part of the reason why that works in the television show is because it was a show that wasn't already a well-known property. I mean, Richard Ayoade was established, Graham Linehan was established, but neither of them were big names in television, and it was, you know, kind of a sleeper cult hit. And so I think part of the reason why you can't make an American IT crowd is that because it's already so well known, it's by its nature not going to be able to be about being a loser who's been pushed off by society. It's kind of like after Red State came out, Kevin Smith said he was going to take a break from making movies for a while. Yeah. And his reasoning for that is that I only know how to make movies about losers, and I'm not a loser anymore. So I don't know. I'm no longer living the life. Now I've actually had a successful career. And so now I don't know how to make that kind of movie, which was the only movie that I knew how to make.
Yeah, it's hard to make a movie about someone who lives in their parents' basement when you no longer live in your parents' basement.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's always going to be the same thing with the IT crowd. I think probably the closest that we've had in America is probably Silicon Valley, which is talking about tech in a very different way. But the main character, he is somebody that would fit in very, very well in the IT crowd. And I haven't seen that full show series, and it's been a while since I watched Silicon Valley. But I would not be surprised if that character was a fan of the IT crowd. It seems very much in line with that type of thing. That first season, though, is great, especially the finale of season 1, where it's all leading up to one grand masturbation joke, is perfect and amazing. For me, personally, the show never really topped that moment.
I worked briefly for that show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was a day player. They were wrapping up season 5, and they needed people just to, like, help tear down the set and move things to their storage facility. But while they were cleaning up, I got a toy from their production offices, and it's one of those toy balls that you throw up into the air and changes colors.
Oh, right on.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So you know that scene where they're like, always blue, always blue.
Yeah.
Yep. I got one of those toys.
That's awesome.
From Silicon Valley.
That's so cool. There is one other show that in my mind is similar to the IT crowd. It's a series called Pure Ownage. Have you ever heard of Pure Ownage?
No, I have not.
It was originally a web series that just, a couple of friends were making, basically about, it was supposed to be a Office-style fake documentary, but it was a guy making a documentary about his brother who is way too into video games. But it got so popular online that it actually got picked up as an actual, produced network sitcom in Canada for, 2 seasons.
Huh.
And there's a lot of similarities in the style of comedy and the types of characters and stuff. One of the big things about that show that I really love, we have so many of these shows where they are fake documentaries. This one is the only show, though, like that, where the person making the documentary is a character in the show. You never see the face of the person holding the camera, but you constantly hear him talking and arguing with his brother. And it's a very strange element to have, the main character is addressing the camera. In doing so, though, he's addressing his brother. And it's a really, really clever element of storytelling that I'm surprised I've never seen in another show like this. There's so many of these fake documentary shows. They make the crew a character.
Well, I mean, The Office did it in the last season,
The
but
Office
we're not
did
going to
it,
talk
but it was
about
like at the very end.
Yeah, but there was a movie that did that, and it actually starred Paul Rudd called 3 Days. And the whole story behind that was that Paul Rudd is a struggling actor in Los Angeles, and he has decided to kill himself in 3 days, thus the name of the movie. And
okay.
Yeah.
Is this a comedy?
It is a comedy, and
Okay.
he actually has a documentary crew follow him around, and they actually talk to him about, like, why do you want to kill yourself? And he's like, I have nothing else to live for. I'm not depressed or anything. I'm just like, I just feel like that my time is up, so I'm just gonna go. And then later on in the movie, there's a second documentary crew that is doing a documentary about the documentary being made about the guy who's going to kill himself in 3 days. And
I need to watch this. This sounds amazing.
Yep. And then there's a real life documentary, this one about The Amazing Jonathan.
The Amazing Jonathan documentary.
Yes, where this guy was making a documentary about The Amazing Jonathan to find out in the middle of his documentary that there was already another documentary crew who is doing the same thing as he was. And then later on in the story, he finds out that there's a third crew also doing the same thing, and The Amazing Jonathan never told any of these crew members that they were all making a documentary on basically the same subject.
That's wild.
Yes.
Well, I guess that'll bring us to the end of this discussion. I love that we were able to talk about unaired pilots, because this is going to be a very deep well for the future.
Yes, it is.
We would also love to receive emails from you. You can send those emails to notgetmade@gmail.com. Talk to us about movies that you would love us to cover or things that we may have missed. This show is as much about us learning about these stories as it is talking about them. So anything that you have to share, we would love to hear.
You can also connect with us on Twitter at HGTNGM or on Instagram at How Did This Not Get Made?
Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for us.
Yep.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you all. And we'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time.